咁其實大家都知道英國咧現在啊正係實施緊呢個 Stamp Duty Holiday，即係印花稅寬限。咁所以真係要真地把握時間啦，諗下呢5個月自己想投資定還是自住啦。
Hello, welcome to watch Friends International TV channel. This is Emery and Amanda reporting from Hong Kong.
大家好啊！歡迎大家收睇今期嘅有台 TV 移民講呢啲，我係你哋嘅主持人 Amanda 啦，同埋我同事 Emery 今日都喺度啦。今期咧，我哋會邀請咗英國嘅一個置業專家阿 Tim 啦，同埋佢助手阿 Jan 啦，作為我哋嘅嘉賓啦。Hello Tim and Jan，Hello， 同大家介紹一下咧10個你要知道嘅英國買樓技能啊！咁咧，如果大家中意我哋移民講呢啲呢個節目啦，記得 like、subscribe 同埋 share 我哋友誠國際嘅 Facebook 啦，同埋 YouTube channel 啦。
Hello, Tim and Jan. How are you?
Hi, 你好啊。
Hello.
Very well.
It's around like 4:30 in Hong Kong. May I know what's the time there?
It's just 9:30 in the morning here.
Oh, 9:30. I hope that's much energy for you. Thanks for being with us today. And as I know, Tim has more than 15 years working experience in UK property investment and consulting industry. Is that right?
That's right, yes. Started buying properties for myself in the early 2000s and now help Chinese investors do the same.
Then you must be very familiar with UK property markets and also understand our clients' needs.
Yes, and after the UK government announced that Hong Kong BNO passport holders can stay in the UK for 5 years and become a permanent resident in UK, more and more Hong Kong clients nowadays looking for properties in UK for their future settlement plan and also investment purpose. Can you please share with us more about what we should know when buying a property in the UK?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that, Amanda. And we're going to discuss today the top 10 points that you need to know about buying UK property. So let's begin with number 1. One of the most important points about buying UK property is setting your goals. And we'll talk first about buying for investment. If you're buying for investment, you should concentrate on areas with low prices and strong rents if you are looking for income. Some examples of areas in the UK that offer this are Leicester and Nottingham, which are in the Midlands, and they offer up to 8% net returns. Areas in the north, such as Bradford, offer up to 10% net returns. In fact, Bradford is one of the highest yielding buy-to-let investment hotspots in the UK.
Well, 10%.
If your focus, absolutely, yeah. So if your focus, though, is growth, capital growth, and income is maybe not the most important thing, then London and the southeast of England are the areas that offer the strongest capital growth over time. They do also have the highest prices and lower returns than the Midlands and the North. But if we look at somewhere like London, prices have doubled on average every 9 years.
Wow.
So very strong capital growth in the southeast of England. But maybe you're an investor who's looking for a balance, perhaps, of income and capital growth. So areas and cities which are definitely worth taking a look at for a balanced return are cities such as Birmingham and Manchester, which on average will give very good capital growth over time and probably around about 5% net returns also. So for an investor, we encourage you to really think about setting your goals for investment and capital growth. Of course, we have a lot of people who are looking to buy in the UK for self-use. So let's take a quick look at self-use. Well, even if you're buying a family home, that is also an investment It's an investment in your future, it's an investment in your life. So it will also generate capital growth during the time that you live in the property. And it can also help with your next purchase, and it can also help in retirement. So the value of your property as it goes up over time is also an important consideration. So you should choose carefully your property for self-use, your family home also.
咁我咯喎，咁我解釋下先講咩啦。咁其實講下呢個目標咧，一定要知清楚咯。一係就投資啦，一係就自住。咁投資一般嚟講，人都係想話想收入高嘅，咁你就要選擇一啲樓價較低、租金較高嘅地區啦。咁例如就話英國中部啦 ，Leicester 認證目前嘅呢啲咧淨回報率係可以高達8%嘅。咁又或者比較英國北部嘅地方啦 ，Bradford。咁其實佢係喺 West Yorkshire，咁其實唔係好多人知，咁 that's why 我就講清楚少少啦。英國北部 West Yorkshire，呢個淨回報率咧係可以高達10%嘅，因為好多人都唔知。咁如果你同話我想要資金增長嘅，咁好明顯就會要我哋 London 啦，同埋呢啲英國東南部嘅地方。咁雖然啦，佢嘅價錢係較高，回報率咧係較低嘅。咁但係佢個資金增長咧係好犀利㗎。咁嚟講嘅話，倫敦啦，佢價格咧平均係可以每9年係double一次。咁如果有啲人話我想一次過滿足晒2個願望嘅，咁咧又要 OK 收入，又要 OK 增長嘅，咁就可以考慮下 Birmingham 或者 Manchester， 咁佢哋嘅回報率咧係可以高達5% 嘅。咁好多人咧雖然話我唔係投資㗎，用嚟自用嘅啫嘛，冇乜所謂啦咁樣。咁但係其實唔係嘅，因為我哋覺得咧家庭住宅咧其實都係長遠嚟講係一個投資嚟嘅，因為咧佢隨住時間過去啦，樓價咧都有所增長㗎。咁而家你就話唔係落腳啦，想找樓咁樣揾間屋住就算啦，咁但係你唔知㗎喎，即係你可能10年後住落咗，你想搬嘅時候，咁你都想你嘅樓價有所增值啦。咁所以而家你嘅謹慎選擇咧，係對你將來退休或者下次買樓嘅時候係好大幫助嘅。
係啦，非常同意阿 Jane 呢一個point，係啦。如果大家想知道咧點樣去揀一個啱嘅地區或者樓咧，真係要揾英國嘅置業專家，所以係嘛？
係啦。
Okay. So Tim, please keep going. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So, moving on to point number 2 then, choosing your location. So the questions that you should ask yourself when choosing a location to buy for self-use or investment. Do people want to live there? So what is attracting people to that particular town or city or general area? Does it have good transport links? Is it easy to get around? Is it easy to travel to the other towns and cities in the UK? Does it have major employers? You should be looking at whether there is enough attraction in that area to attract people. Does it have good or outstanding schools? It's a very, very important consideration for Chinese investors and BNOs who are looking to come to the UK. It's one of the first things they will think about. And is the local economy growing? What's happening? Is there investment into the local economy? And another very, very good indicator of an area, excuse me, is are developers building there? So if you can see a lot of development, new housing developments being constructed, this is also a very good sign for choosing your location.
我又咁講點揀住邊度咧？咁呢個好重要啦。咁當然就要考慮下個交通配套啦。咁你翻學啊、翻工啊，使唔使要依賴地鐵啊、火車啊或者搭巴士咧？咁揸車就當然個彈性係高啦。咁但係你都要考慮埋倫敦市中心嘅地方咧，有時咧會塞車塞得好緊要，呢啲時間咧會塞咗預算唔可以。咁所以咧，即使本地人咧，佢都會免費搭地鐵咯。咁咧例如做媽媽㗎啦，咁就想你屋企附近超市啊或者店鋪啦，咁同埋你可以睇下個揾工機會喎。 需唔需要會有自己嘅工種，需唔需要有相關行業公司喺附近咧？咁話好多媽媽啊、爸爸就關心校本啦。咁我想講咧，其實英國咧度度都有好嘅學校嘅，咁唔似得香港嗰啲哇要爭分頭啊，爭得咁辛苦咁樣。咁所以咧，我覺得揀校網或者選校咧喺英國嚟講就無需太緊張咯。咁同埋亦都考慮啦，當地嘅經濟增長，咁睇下嗰邊有冇啲基建計劃啊、未來發展方案，有冇啲開發啊，又或者有冇啲新樓盤咁樣咯。咁同埋你都可以揾下啲犯罪率啦，又或者洪水泛濫區嗰度作參考咯。
Now we can see how many different aspects that we need to do the research before we are choosing the location.
Very important.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to point number 3, UK property types. So let's take a look at the 2 main types of properties that we have here in the UK. Let's start with houses, first of all. Houses are usually suitable for families, and we have some examples you can see on the slide there also that I'll talk about in just a moment. So houses will usually have anywhere between 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedrooms, depending on their size. We have 3 main types of UK house. We have what's known as a terraced house. We have what's known as a semi-detached house, which is 2 houses joined together side by side. Terrace would be a row of more than 2 houses. And we also have detached houses, which is a house which is on its own, not joined to anything else. Houses offer more space and storage. They will usually have a garden, back garden, and a small front garden often. They will usually attract longer tenancies. So if you're buying a house as an investment to rent, tenants will tend to stay longer in family houses. However, owners of the house, yourself as the investor, will pay all of the repairs and maintenance for the property. And houses are usually owned as freehold. We'll talk a little bit more later about the difference between freehold and leasehold. But let me move on very quickly to apartments. So houses and now apartments. Apartments are usually more suitable for single people or couples, maybe young professionals might buy or rent an apartment. They usually have 1, 2 or 3 bedrooms. They are perhaps easier to maintain than houses, less maintenance, although usually tenants will tend to stay for a shorter period. Maybe they will rent for 1 or 2 years before moving on, compared to houses. The freeholder maintains the building. We'll talk a little bit more about the difference, but when you own an apartment, you own it usually on a leasehold basis, not a freehold basis. And there will be a freeholder who owns the whole building, and they will be responsible for the communal maintenance, okay? So the main difference between houses and apartments in the UK.
咁看圖識字啦，睇翻個 slide 啦，其實英國樓咧分類好簡單，係屋啦同埋apartment 兩種，即係個公寓。咁咧屋咧佢有分獨立屋啦、半獨立屋同埋排屋。咁咧其實最好咧就當然係獨立屋啦。咁半獨立屋咧就有埲牆喺中間嘅，就有2戶嘅。咁排屋咧就大概係10至到或者10嘅以上嘅屋。一排咁樣一齊咁樣咯，咁佢哋嘅最主要分別咧就係話佢哋嘅空間啦。咁獨立屋當然個花園大啦，咁雖然話啦半獨立屋，咁但係咧佢其實個花園咧都唔少嘅喎，咁尤其是係舊式嘅設計啦，個花園咧係可以仲大過一間半獨立屋嘅花園都得嘅，即係有時會係咁樣咯。咁排屋咧佢嘅花園咧就較細啦，咁有時如果唔係花園嘅話咧，就會有較細嘅庭院咁樣咯。咁 當然啦，屋嚟講就較公寓嘅嚟講就多啲空間同埋儲物位置咯。咁佢哋房間嘅數量咧，大概係2至5個房間啦，較適合一家人住嘅。係啦，咁同埋講翻個房屋嗰度啦，個永久業權，多數喺英國買屋咧就係永久業權㗎啦。咁租客咧多數都係長租嘅，咁係由業主咧係支付所有嘅維修費用。咁好啦，講翻公寓，咁其實好似香港咁樣啦，咁係1至3間睡房，較適合啲單身人士啊、情侶或者年輕人住嘅。咁由於佢個單位細啦，唔需要維修曬成大間屋嘅咁多位置咯，咁所以係容易維修。咁同埋單位嘅就多數係租賃業權㗎啦，咁係由租賃業權公司去負責維修保養。咁一般嚟講咧，由於你係租屋俾啲單身啊，又或者年輕人住啦，咁個租約期咧就會較短咯。
Great. Okay, so let's move on to a question that we are often asked, which is, should I buy new build? Should I buy second-hand property? So let's take a look at the pros and cons of both new build and second-hand property. Excuse me. So, starting with new build. What are the advantages of buying new build property? Well, firstly, modern construction and installation. So the houses are built to the current building standards, and the installation levels are very good. They have very efficient running costs due to the modern construction. They will also come with a 10-year building warranty. So all of the important structural aspects of the house or apartment will be guaranteed for a 10-year period. New build properties are often what we call chain-free. And what that means is that the person that you're buying it from is usually a developer, and they don't need to sell the property to someone else before you can move in. They don't have a buyer above them. So it's a little more straightforward. Also, new build homes will tend to increase in value faster than second-hand properties. But there are some disadvantages as well. You will pay a price premium for a new build property. For instance, maybe 10% above what a similar second-hand property would cost. There can be a lack of space and storage with new build designs. There can be completion delays. Maybe your new property won't be ready quite when you expect, maybe a small delay of a few weeks or months. That's quite common, something you need to be aware of. And there can be a little bit of snagging and general settlement in the property. Maybe during the first 6 or 12 months, there might be some minor issues that need to be repaired. Cracking out of a ceiling is a very common one as the property dries out and you start to live in it with the heating on. So some pros and cons for new build property there. Moving on then to second-hand property, existing property stock. So second-hand property, particularly if we're talking about houses, will usually be built on larger plots. So the plot of land that the house is built on will often be larger. The value will be well established in the market. You won't be paying a premium for second-hand property. Second-hand properties, particularly if they're older, Edwardian or Victorian era, will have some nice character features to them, which is quite nice. Some people prefer that. They will be part of an established community, which will have infrastructure around it, things like shops and maybe schools nearby. And there is also potential to improve or extend a second-hand property, maybe easier than a new build design, which is quite fixed. There are some disadvantages, just like new build property. Buying chains that we mentioned. You're buying a property from a seller, but the seller can't move out until their buyer is ready. That can be an issue. Regular maintenance of older properties will be required. They may be less energy efficient to heat, particularly during the winter. And if you do want to make any upgrades or improvements, then you need to factor in the cost of any work that you might want to do on your second-hand property.
OK 嗰度啦，咁講買新樓好定二手好咧，其實各有好壞處啦。咁講買新樓嘅，咁新建嘅就擺明個保溫物料個品質會比較好啲，咁同埋個科技嗰度都先進少少，咁所以咧佢嘅燃料同埋營運成本咧係會比較低嘅。咁要記得啦，咁喺英國好凍㗎嘛，咁你成日要勁開暖氣，即係話我哋喺呢度開暖氣嘅次數咧仲犀利過喺香港開冷氣嘅。咁所以咧個門戶嗰度咧會用得好勁嘅咯，咁所以呢個好重要。咁同埋新樓啦，佢有10年建築物質保證，咁即係如果話如果你牆身啊有咩問題啊、天花啊、漏水啊嗰啲嘢有事咧，咁佢都會保證同你修理翻咯。咁仲有啦，新樓個最大好處咧就係無鏈啊，咁英文咧就係叫 no chain。咁因為多數咧都係發展商直接 sell 俾你咯，咁係冇 seller 嘅，咁而 seller 亦都唔需要為等收樓，咁先可以交到樓俾你咯，咁所以咧個交易咧就會係加快咗嘅。咁都隨住時間嘅增長，隨住時間啦，咁樓價咧都會有所增長嘅個資本度。咁但係咧好明顯啦，新樓咧都會有少少日價嘅，咁就會大概相比係舊嘅樓啦，係貴10% 左右啦。咁同埋新樓咧嘅設計上面嘅空間咧就比較保守，咁所以咧儲存空間亦都會稍會少咯。咁同埋咧，如果佢新樓啦，咁佢嘅員工咧有時都會稍延遲都唔奇嘅。咁話晒新建啦，唔多唔少咧都會有啲修葺要做嘅。咁跟住咧就講下二手樓咯喎。二手樓咧大部分啊，佢嘅佔地啦同埋室內實用面積係較大嘅，咁同埋佢係有一個既定嘅市場價值啦。咁同埋個外觀嚟講咧，多數咧佢會有啲英國 style 嘅。例如話英國傳統嘅風格特色嘅建築啦，Victorian style 維多利亞式嘅，或者 Bonds conversion 有啲鄉村氣息嘅建築啦。咁英國人咧自己就好喜歡呢啲嘅。咁同埋咧舊樓入邊咧，佢已經係喺個社區度一段時間啦，咁佢係一定嘅基礎建設喺度。咁同埋你住耐咗啦，你想改善啊、擴展啊，又或者加建咧，咁佢都有一定嘅潛力嘅。咁你要改善得嘅，咁當然啦就有一定嘅成本去做啦。咁另外唔好處嘅咧就話多數咧都係會有購買面積㗎，你需要做一啲定期嘅保養啦。咁個能源效益咧亦都相對嚟較低嘅。咁但係總括嚟講啦，真冇難求你，咁新樓咧都各有好壞處嘅。
係啦 ，Jenna， 我哋呢邊咧想問下咧，如果佢想買新樓嘅話咧，係咪一定係交樓咧先至要俾晒成個樓嗰個錢嘅咧？因為香港咧其實樓花階段都有啲係可以即係提早要俾晒啲買樓嘅錢嘅。咁但係喺英國係咪一定收樓嘅時候咧，即係建期咧先至俾晒成個樓買樓嗰個費用咧？
即係話要收樓嘅時候先俾晒費用。
係咪啊？即係如果我買新樓，係啦，係啦，即係唔係話未起好我就要俾晒錢㗎嘛？應該唔使㗎嘛。
收樓嗰陣時就價錢啦，就俾晒原價。
OK， 好。
通常如果買二手樓，佢嘅嗰個維修嘅費用會唔會佔成個 purchasing 嘅一個好大嘅部分咧？
佔成個 purchasing
係啊，佔成個 purchasing 就維修之後，可能買二手樓之後自己
咁睇你點樣裝修間屋咯，可能。
就佢頭先話嗰啲水電冷氣嗰啲。
係啊，如果係我諗，如果係好舊嘅樓，你要成個翻新換晒啲水即係水管啊、電線啊，咁可能個 cost 都好高，仲貴過你買新樓。
係啊，咁買新樓可能抵啲。
係啊，所以就話即係計嚟計去咧，好難好 好明顯咁樣講俾你聽話，究竟係新樓好啲定係舊樓咧？因為真係各有各成本啦。
明白。好，咁麻煩啦，Tim 繼續啦。Tim, please keep going. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we're halfway through now. So let's take a look at point number 5. Again, we have a slide that you can take a look at there. We're going to talk about legal ownership. We touched a little bit earlier on freehold houses and leasehold apartments. So let's just take a quick look at the difference between those two ways of legally owning property in the UK. Starting with freehold. With freehold, you own the house. If we're talking about a house, which is usually owned freehold, you own the house, but you also own the land that the house is built on. And there is no expiry date of your legal ownership. So with freehold ownership, you own the property forever until you decide to sell. With a leasehold property, which apartments usually are in the UK, there is an important difference in that you own the apartment, but you do not own the building that the apartment is in, and you do not own the land underneath the building. There will be a freeholder who owns the building and owns the land. You own the apartment within the building on a leasehold basis. So legal ownership of a leasehold property is actually fixed in the lease. And the lease will say whether the amount of time that you own the property for is usually 99, 125, 250, or in some cases 999 years. So your term of legal ownership is actually defined in the lease. Okay, there's a little bit more to perhaps talk about that another time, because the question that you might have is, okay, what happens after 125 years? And that's a little bit more of a complicated question and answer. But the property, as I say, during that time is legally yours, and you will own the title deed to that property, no matter whether it's freehold or leasehold.
咁你咁講啦，咁我講翻個物業權啦，咁咧個物業權咧就包括咗 freehold 永久業權同埋 leasehold 租賃業權嘅。咁永久業權咧就多數係買屋嘅，就係永久業權㗎啦。咁即係擁有物業同埋土地嘅永久業權。咁其實英國大部分咧屋咧都係 freehold 㗎。咁但係業主咧就需要負責物業日常嘅保養同埋維修啦。咁 leasehold 租賃業權，咁好似香港咁樣啦，你買單位就係租賃業權㗎啦。咁好似香港咁樣，咁因為咧香港大部分嘅物業咧都可以話係 leasehold 物業嚟嘅，咁個地權咧屬於政府嘅。咁再講清楚啲啦，咁你擁有係公寓，但係咧唔擁有成棟大廈，又或者一個土地嘅。咁所以咧，你每年你要向個物業持有人去俾個地租同埋保養費，即係 ground rent 同埋 service charge。咁講翻個租賃業權嘅期限咧，喺英國嚟講多數係固定嘅，99年啦、125年、250年，又或者999年。咁呢度想提翻少少啦，咁購買呢科物業嘅時候咧，就必須要好小心 lease 嘅時間，因為如果 lease 係短於10年嘅咧，物價咧係會大跌嘅，咁同埋亦都會好難轉售咯。咁所以最好買物業嘅時候咧，個 lease 期啊係要125年或以上，咁就穩陣啲。
話要百幾年咁耐。咁會唔會咧？其實佢持有嗰個leasehold 嘅物業嘅成本咧，係會高過佢持有 freehold 咧，因為佢要交地稅啊嗰啲，係咪㗎
？Let me check this thing. Some of the cost of the leasehold can it be higher than freehold?
Well, okay. No, it doesn't. It doesn't really make a difference in terms of a property will have a value based on its property type and its area. The only thing that will affect the value of a leasehold property is if the lease is quite short. So maybe the lease, when it was new, was 125 years, but maybe now there are only 60 years remaining on the lease. That can affect the value of that property. So it's a good idea, before the property has less than 80 years remaining on the lease, it's a good idea to negotiate with the freeholder to extend the length of the lease back up to the original 125 years.
OK。
係啦，咁正話就講話其實最好嘅年期就125年或以上啦。咁但係如果你真係少過125年，又或者真係去到80年嘅時候咧，咁你就要續㗎啦。咁就會有真係可以咯，但係會有少少麻煩，因為你要做下 research 究竟即係好似買餸咁樣，咁你要格下價，睇下邊個價錢係最平啊咁樣咯。咁但係呢度係要一定嘅時間嘅，因為續期咧有平有貴，而貴嘅就係多咯會。
Okay, so let's move on to point number 6, and how to find property. So now you've figured out where you want to be, what kind of property you're going to buy, how do you go about finding that investment or family home. So a lot of people today, of course, are searching online. In fact, the majority of activity searching for property is online now. That will include major property portals, platforms here in the UK, and I'm sure many of you will be familiar with websites such as Rightmove, that's one of our biggest, Zoopla, on the market, and we have some examples on the slide that you can take a look at there. Also, we have estate agents' offices here in the UK. So that's a real estate agent that will have an office, usually in a high street, town or city centre location, and people will still go and speak to local agents to have a look at what's on the market with them. Property agents as well, property agents who maybe have a private commercial office and have a website that will market properties. That's another way. And sourcing agents as well. That's a type of property agent who are more specialised. They will maybe be able to find off-market or below market value properties, and will offer a lot of additional services to you as well as sourcing the property. So point 6, how to find property.
咁講揾樓咯，其實喺度揾樓同香港差唔多啦。一係就可以用網上邊嘅房地產平台啦，咁你睇到嗰個 application 就睇到話佢全數啦，我相信香港人都會認識啦已經。咁同埋你可以咁就去啦，一啲地產代理商啦，想話揾樓啊買樓，咁佢就可以幫到你㗎啦。咁另外一個捷徑咧就係可以考慮嘅就話叫委託代理，咁你網上面咧就睇到英文個 term 咧就叫 sourcing agent。咁我覺得最大好處嘅咧，佢就係同你提供一條龍買樓服務啦。咁因為其實基本上我哋咧就係你嘅私人助理啦。咁客戶只需要列明佢要買樓嘅條件啊同埋需要，咁我哋咧就同你揾樓，直至到買到樓為止㗎啦。咁基本上個客人咧係唔需要用腦咁滯嘅，可以，但最緊要佢知道自己要買乜咯。係啦。咁個過程咧我講少少啦，咁就包括咗。同地產代理啦、按揭啊、律師、驗樓師就嘢溝通。咁你知道啦，揾樓、睇樓、揀樓，同埋所有溝通啊、睇文件嘅嘢咧係好花時間同埋係好瑣碎。但係呢啲嘢咧，每一個步驟咧都係非常之重要。咁所以如果你能夠揾到一個專心又細心同埋又信得過嘅幫手咧，咁你就唔使煩咯。
咁所以其實阿 Tim 同埋阿 Jan 咧，係咪都係 sourcing agent 咧？可以幫我哋啲客戶去揾樓啦、睇樓啦，同埋處理所有買樓嘅事咧？
當然啦。
OK， 咁非常好喎。所以如果大家想真係有 對英國嘅樓有興趣啦，可以通過我哋啦聯絡到阿 Tim 同埋阿 Jen 啦，為大家提供多啲關於英國買樓嘅一條龍服務啊。
唔該你頭先。
Great. Okay. So let's move on to point number 7 now. Buying costs. What you typically need to budget for when buying a UK property, no matter for investment or self-use. The first cost after your purchase price to consider are your legal fees. Those are the UK solicitor conveyancing fees that they will charge to carry out the legal purchase and also do all of the legal checks known as searches. You should expect solicitor fees to be anywhere between £1,000 and £1,200, including the searches. If you're being quoted considerably higher fees than that, you should ask some questions and take a very close look. Average solicitor fees for property conveyancing in the UK are around about £1,000. If you are actually taking out a mortgage to buy your property, you're not a cash buyer, you're raising a mortgage, then you may use a mortgage broker. And the good mortgage brokers who are able to help you and access good rates and terms with lenders will usually charge a fee, and there is very good value in doing that. Particularly if you are a non-resident mortgage applicant, you will certainly benefit from using a specialist mortgage broker who can help you with everything. And the fees that they charge, they can often save you in the interest rate that they're able to obtain for you with your mortgage. So what can you expect in terms of fees? Broker fees can be anywhere between £995 and £2,500. Again, you should look closely at what is the value that I'm getting from this mortgage broker for the service that they're providing and the fee that they're charging. Survey fees. When you buy a property, you need to have a evaluation survey carried out at the very least. You might also consider a more detailed survey, which will be a building survey. It will look in detail at the construction of the property, the roof. It will be a very thorough, detailed report. If you're taking out a mortgage, often the survey fee will be included in the mortgage application. If you're a cash buyer, you will need to instruct and pay for the survey yourself. And depending on the type of survey, a basic one or a very detailed one, the cost can be anywhere between £150 to £350, for instance. The next cost in buying is actually usually the largest cost after the purchase price. So the biggest cost that you have to budget for after the purchase price is what's known as stamp duty land tax. And that's a government tax charged on the purchase of all land and property in the UK. We do have some tables that you're going to be able to take a look at. And this is quite, detailed area because it depends on who you are as a buyer. It also depends on your purchase price. But if we talk very briefly, if you do not own any other property in the world and you are buying a property in the UK for self-use, you will be regarded as a first-time buyer. That means that even if you own property in Hong Kong already, or in Australia or in the US, you will not qualify as a first-time buyer, even though it's the first property in the UK you will ever buy. So it means first-time buyer, first property. And if it's for self-use as a family home, currently there is relief on stamp duty. So if you're buying a property up to £500,000, until the end of March next year, there is no stamp duty to pay as a first-time buyer. Okay? Investor buyers and people who already own property somewhere else in the world are not regarded as first-time buyers. They are regarded as additional property buyers or second property buyers. Now, they also currently benefit from the stamp duty discount, which is available until the end of March next year. And what that means is that compared to the normal rate of stamp duty that they would pay, they are now paying a reduced amount of stamp duty, and the amount of discount depends on the purchase price. It makes a big difference the higher the purchase price. I'll give you a couple of examples. You can see on one of the slides, which is the slide for second property buyers or buy-to-let purchasers. You can see that on a purchase price of £250,000, that might be something like a two-bedroom apartment in Manchester, for instance. The stamp duty, if you're buying now, before the end of March next year, is 3% or £7,500. After the end of March, and before the stamp duty was announced, the rate would be 4% or £10,000. So that's a saving on a £250,000 purchase of £2,500. And when we go up to the price of £500,000, 500,000, the stamp duty currently, again, would be 3%, which would be, let's take a look, usually 6%. So that is a considerable saving. Your stamp duty is effectively cut in half. So you're saving a considerable amount. Instead of paying £30,000 in stamp duty at 6%, if you buy a property and complete on it before the end of March, then you are saving £15,000. That's 50% less than the normal rate. And this, of course, is one of the reasons that so many people are looking to buy on a property that they can complete on before the end of March next year.
咁我講翻少少啦，個購買成本嗰度咧，其實係除咗首期啦同埋總樓價之外咧，你係要俾律師費啦、按揭經紀費、驗樓費同埋印花費嘅。咁我再講少個大概係 charge 幾多錢啦。咁律師費係大概係1000至到1200磅啦。咁按揭經紀咧就係大概1000至到2500磅。咁驗樓費咧係大概150至到350嘅。咁但係有時咧個驗樓費都可以免費嘅，咁點解咧？因為有時個按揭申請嗰度咧個 plan 就包埋嘅，咁所以可以咁講係免費咯。咁另外最重要嘅就係印花費啦，個印花稅啊。咁你應該見到個表啦，咁我就唔長談話究竟慳幾多啦。咁你現在可以睇到個表。咁我講少少啦。咁其實大家都知道英國咧現在又正係實施緊呢個 stamp duty holiday。即係印花稅寬限。如果咧首置業買家講緊係講緊全世界入邊咧，佢都係冇物業嘅。咁喺出年嘅3月前，如果佢買50萬磅以下嘅住宅物業咧，佢就唔需要俾印花稅嘅。咁但係如果佢唔係首次置業嘅話咧，無論嗰個物業嘅價值多少啦，佢都係需要繳交額外嘅3% 印花稅。咁其實呢3% 咧，其實都比之前冇寬限嘅時間咧，都已經係少咗一半㗎啦。因為之前咧係6% 咁多嘅。咁另外啦，正係倡議緊但未完全 confirm 嘅咧，就話嚟緊出年4月開始啦，就可能會對海外嘅買家再加多2% 額外嘅印花稅咯。
哦，咁所以其實呢排應該英國嘅樓咧係多咗成交喎，因為可以唔使交稅，同埋如果4月之後加印花稅，咁會唔會 BNO 嘅申請人都要加稅咧？
要㗎。
即係因為佢未正式成為英國嘅公民， 或者永久居民，咁好有機會 BNO Visa 咧都係要交多啲稅喎。如果出年4月，
所以如果大家諗住買樓，要係下一年3月份，3月尾之前快啲決定。
係啦，咁所以而家就大家都要即係觀察呢個市場，或者諗下自己啊，真係係咪想慳呢個稅咧？睇下自己準備好未咯，最緊要就係
啦。好，咁麻煩添繼續。
Okay, right. So let's move to the final couple of points that we have for you today. Number 8, which is the buying process. So what happens when? So let's take a look. So usually, when you're buying a property from a developer, maybe you're buying one of the new build properties that we spoke about earlier, the first part of the process is that you will usually pay a reservation fee. So that is an admin fee, effectively, that you will pay to hold a particular property. You'll choose a property, decide which one you like, and then pay a reservation fee to hold that property. That means that it won't be sold to any other buyer. Reservation fees, depending on the developer, will range between £2,000 to £5,000. It's not an additional cost. It will be deducted from your purchase price, but it's paid to hold that particular property for you. The next stage, you will instruct your UK solicitor. So you will find a UK solicitor that you're happy with, one that you want to work with, and you will instruct them, usually by giving them some money on account, maybe £500 or £1,000, and then they will begin representing you for your purchase. They will then receive the purchase contracts from the seller. That will usually happen quite quickly, and you will have 28 days normally to look at the contracts, discuss them with your solicitor, raise any inquiries to the seller, and then when all parties are happy, you can then sign the contract known as legal exchange. Okay? And legal exchange means that you sign to say that you will buy, and the seller signs to say that they will sell at the agreed price. And that is a legally binding agreement called legal exchange. So, once those contracts are signed, you will then arrange to pay the deposit to your UK solicitor. And the deposit level, again, is usually set by the seller and will be anything between 10 and 30% of the purchase price. You will then move to legal completion. Once all of the legal searches are carried out and all of the inquiries are raised and answered, and your UK solicitor representing you is happy, a date will be set for legal completion when you will become the full legal owner of the property. When that happens, you will send the balance of the purchase price again to your solicitor. So you will have already paid the deposit. The balance which is due will be paid to your solicitor to be then paid to the seller's solicitors. And at that point, the title of the property will then be registered in your name, your individual name if you're buying as an individual, or your company name if you are making a company purchase. So you then become the full legal owner of that property on legal completion.
咁其實英國咧同埋香港咧個買樓過程大致上都係差唔多㗎啦。咁買新樓啦，咁你要俾3次錢啦。如果講買新樓，就細訂啦、大訂同埋尾數。咁二手樓你就唔需要細訂啦、大訂同埋尾數。咁講細訂咧，如果你買新樓，大概個價錢係500至到5000啦，咁視乎個發展項目而定。咁大訂咧個就係個買價嘅10% 至到30%。咁都係嗰句，以上咧都係一個參考啦，視乎唔同買家嘅做法而定嘅。
Okay, so let's move on to point 9, which is calculating investment returns. So this is one for really one for all of the investors listening in. So the first thing that you really need to think about is calculating your projected income. And you will take a look and work out what is the property likely to rent for in the current market. And you will take a look at that figure, the monthly rental amount, and multiply it by 12 so that you have the gross annual income figure. It's the first thing that you need to really know before deciding to move ahead with an investment purchase. You then, understanding the gross annual income, need to calculate the projected expenses, okay? Now, if it is a leasehold property, an apartment that we discussed earlier, there will be some additional expenses that you will need to take into account. And the two most common are the service charge and any insurances. An insurance charge, a service charge, excuse me, is a fee that you pay as the leaseholder, as the owner of the property, which pays for all of the communal maintenance of the property that your apartment is in. And the insurance is the building's insurance that insures the building. So the other expense that you need to be aware of is ground rent. And ground rent is a small annual payment that is made to the freeholder, so the person or the company that own the building that your apartment is in. So service charge, insurance, and ground rent should be calculated, as well as rental management. So if you're not going to manage the property yourself, and you're going to use a rental management company to do that, their fees will typically be between 5 and 10% of the monthly rent. So you need to calculate that on an annual basis too. Okay, so once you have figured out your gross annual income and your projected annual expenses, you simply deduct the expenses from the gross income, and that will give you your pre-tax net return or yield. It's very important to project what that number is so that you know how that property is going to perform for you as an investment over time. One of the other things that is important to take a look at is how that property will go up in value over time in terms of capital growth. And it will be a very good idea to have a look and see how that particular area has performed over time in the past, to get an understanding of how it will perform in the future. And you can use resources, online resources, to take a look at historical price growth in the UK, in all areas of the UK. You can use websites of some of our major mortgage lenders, the Halifax, the Nationwide, and there are some specialist house price growth websites such as HomeTrack that you can use. So you can look at the statistical data to see, okay, what has this particular area, town or city done over the last, say, 40 or 50 years, and that will give you an indication of how it might be expected to increase in value in future years.
咁講下個投資啦，回報啊，投資嘅想回報㗎啦，咁啊講下點樣計啦。咁其實係如果講嘅預計總收入咧，就係每月嘅租金乘12個月。咁講預計費用咧，就你大概要如果係租人業權嘅樓啦，就要俾服務費啦、地租，咁仲有保險同埋俾批准出租嘅管理費。因為多數咧，尤其是你喺外買家咧，你自己唔會親手去管你自己嘅物業㗎啦，咁你就要用 agent 去同你做管理。咁個價錢咧就大概係租金嘅5至10% 啦。咁嘅收益咧就係總收入就減去支出。咁同時間啦，除咗咁樣睇話你自己賺到幾多啦，亦都可以用埋一啲 Apps 啊或者 website 嚟睇下你自己嘅物業嘅表現情況。咁呢啲就係例如 Halifax 啦、Nationwide 同埋 HomeTrack 嘅網站。
Okay, so moving on to our final points for today's talk. Number 10, single versus multi-let. We get asked a lot about running an investment property as a multi-let, otherwise known as a house of multiple occupation, or HMO for short. We think it's really important, if you are an investor, to think very, very carefully about how you are going to run and operate your investment portfolio. So let's take a look at the important differences between a single let and a multi-let. Starting with a single let. When you rent a property as a single let, you are renting it to just one party. That might be an individual, it might be a couple, it might be a family of 3 or 4. The rental contract will be with one party, okay? So you're only managing one party, whether it's a single couple or family. And you will usually be signing a 6 or a 12-month rental agreement, known as an AST in the UK, an assured short hold tenancy, so rental contract to a single party. When you do that, you agree that that party will pay you the agreed monthly rent for a minimum of 6 or 12 months. So you know what your income is going to be during the period of the agreement. And you only have to manage payments from one tenant. So a little easier to manage, but you will of course be renting that property at the market value rent based on a single let. When we turn to multi-let or HMOs, it works very differently in that you will have more than one tenant to manage. If you have a property which has 6 rooms, you may have 6 different individuals living in your property. So you have multiple tenants to manage. There may also be a higher turnover of tenants because single people, younger people will tend to stay for a shorter period of time. So you may have people moving in and moving out on a more regular basis than with a single let. So there is a potential for voids, either from time to time or regular voids. You have to build that in to your business model to allow for more regular voids. If you have 6 rooms, but maybe only 4 are rented, you need to look at what your return will be based on 4 rooms and not 6 rooms. And you will also have to manage payments from multiple tenants. So you may have 5 or 6 individual tenants, you have to manage the payments from them, or the agent that you use has to manage that on your behalf. And there will certainly be additional costs for running an HMO, a multi-let property. There will be more wear and tear on the property, so you may have to refurbish and make repairs on a more regular basis. And of course, with the property sector in the UK becoming more regulated, you have to also figure out and factor in the cost of licensing and certification. So all of your gas and electric, and also the HMO license, which is required in many areas of the UK now, also has to be taken into account. However, if you understand the business model correctly, and you manage it correctly, and you do your calculations correctly, then you can achieve above market rents by renting as an HMO or multi-let in order to achieve a higher net yield. But it's very important to understand how to do that correctly, how to implement it, how to manage it. Otherwise, you can end up with a lot more work, more expense, and actually figure out that, hey, I'm actually just making the same, or maybe sometimes less, than if I ran this property as a single let. So it depends on how well it's actually managed.
咁講翻話單租同埋 HMO 就真係分入出租嘅分別咯喎。咁單租咧，我明顯你只係要管理一個單位嘅啫。咁嘅社單身啊、夫妻啊、家庭，咁個房東咧係只係收一次錢嘅啫。咁即係擺明就少嗰 好多嘢做啦。咁房東咧係有6至12個月嘅租金保證嘅，咁而佢收嘅咧就係市值租金。咁我快啲講翻呢個香港嘅劏房啦，因為好多人都有興趣想知。咁劏房咧，咁英文嚟講咧就係 HMO。咁咧佢嘅回報係較單租嘅係高1至2成。咁表面上咧係真係好好啦個收入，咁但同時間咧其實都有好多成本嘅。咁例如啦，佢嘅額外費用啦，因為你要翻新啦，同埋咧英國人好乖嘅做嘅。咁你要攞好多安全啊同埋安全健康嘅規格許可證，佢哋英文咧就叫 health and safety license。咁同埋而家個趨勢咧係越嚟越重要咯 ，HMO 入邊嘅規格嘅嘢，咁所以咧你要攞 license 咧唔係就攞一個㗎，咁你可能攞2至3個有關嘅認證咯。咁同埋咧，租房齡咧最短啦，你可以租1個月咯。咁你租得1個月，咁之後啲客咧就易嚟易走啦。咁所以咧房間咧會出現即係時間咧上面嘅空隙啊。咁如果空嘅時候，咁你即係蝕錢啦，係咪先？咁所以如果你要賺到高於單租市場上面嘅租金咧，你房東就必須要確保所有出租嘅時間咧都期得滿滿啦。咁同埋咧，多幾戶人家，你就多啲行政嘅嘢要做㗎啦，你就收多幾次租金，又或者有關嘅事宜處理咯。咁即係話講翻阿天話㗎啦，咁係如果 HMO 即係劏房，你處理得好、管理得好嘅，你係會賺到錢嘅。咁但係入邊個中咧係另一個學問嚟嘅，因為入邊都好多技巧，咁所以大家應該審慎去選擇咯。
Okay, thanks so much, Tim and Jen. We still have some more questions from our audience today. The first question is, can we get a mortgage if we don't have any income in the UK? Because you mentioned before when we buy a property, we can get a mortgage broker to help us. But if we don't have any income in UK, is there any chance we can still get a mortgage?
Okay, well, the answer is yes, but the answer is also there is a certain kind of mortgage that you will be able to get in the UK without UK income. It's a very, very good question. It's something that we're answering every day, actually, at the moment from our inquiries. The first thing to understand about UK mortgages is that there are 2 types. There are residential mortgages, which are designed for people to buy a house that they will live in. So that will be a family home usually, okay? So for a residential mortgage in the UK, you will need to have income in the UK. The banks will not lend to you on a residential mortgage if you don't have UK income. So that's very, very important. That means that if you are looking to buy a property as a family home in the UK, but you don't have a UK income currently, you are not going to qualify for a residential mortgage. And the definition of a residential mortgage is that you may live in the property, it can be your own home, your family home, but you will need UK income to apply for a residential mortgage. So where does that leave, say, a Hong Kong buyer who wants to buy UK property but doesn't have UK income? Well, the good news is that they are still able to apply for a UK mortgage, but they will be restricted to applying for a certain type of mortgage known as a buy-to-let mortgage. Now, the important difference between a residential mortgage, a self-use, a family home, and a buy-to-let mortgage is that the terms and conditions of a buy-to-let mortgage state that the property must be rented to a tenant. So you can think of a buy-to-let mortgage as an investment mortgage, a mortgage for an investment property. You do not need UK income to apply for a buy-to-let mortgage. You can rely on the income that you have now, for instance, in Hong Kong, or wherever you are in the world, if you're a non-resident, a UK non-resident. But the restriction is that you should not live in that property. It should only be rented to a tenant. So it's good and bad news, which is that, if you're buying for self-use, you're going to be restricted really in terms of mortgages to a buy-to-let mortgage, which is intended to be rented to a tenant. Now, the obvious question is, well, what happens if my circumstances change? I buy the property with a buy-to-let mortgage and I intend to rent it to a tenant, but I can't find a tenant, or maybe my circumstances change and I'm going to be coming to the UK and I'm going to need to live there myself. Well, in that situation, it would be your responsibility to inform the bank, the lender, that your circumstances have changed and that the property won't be rented to a tenant, but that you do intend to live there. So that's typically how it works, with the differences between the two types of mortgage and what you need to be able to qualify for round one. We do actually have a slide that you can take a look at. That will show you some typical rates and terms, not all of them, because there are a lot of lenders in the UK, and the rates and terms that you are able to get will depend on your own personal circumstances. But there are very, very good rates available to non-residents right now in the UK, at quite high borrowing levels, up to 80% of your purchase price, with rates starting at just below 2%. So again, very important to use a really good mortgage broker who can help you process your application to the lender and obtain you the best rates and the best terms.
咁講下英國按揭啦，咁其實分兩種，最主要咧係住宅按揭啦，同埋啲所講嘅班照咧，就其實就即係話買樓出租嘅按揭。咁咧住宅按揭咧係最主要用嚟自住㗎啦，咁你係需要英國收入先可以申請嘅。咁講緊買樓出租嘅按揭咧，就係該物業咧係必須係要出租嚟用嘅。咁你只需要啦香港收入係唔需要英國收入咧都可以申請㗎啦。咁現在睇到個表啦係呢啲英國按揭利率嘅參考，咁係海外人士適用嘅。咁有時咧好多人都會話，哎呀我嘅物業嘅價格咧係低嘅，當你係85,000咁上下啦。咁係你係可以借到咁㗎，咁但係咧有時啲條件咧就會比較收緊。咁例如呢個 lender 咧，即係呢個 bank 咁佢就會要申請人親身飛到嚟英國，係簽署所有文件咯。咁當然啦，唔同嘅 lenders 唔同利率、借貸唔同嘅amount 啦，咁有唔同嘅條件啊，或者其他嘅限制咯。咁仲有啦，上一提嘅就係話申請按揭咧，其實唔需要話，哎呀我而家買到樓啦，或者揀到樓啦，我先再申請按揭。其實咧，我哋成日都會主張啲人啦，係其實你即使未揾樓，你睇到心儀嘅物業啦，其實你應該都係未籌劃申請按揭定先咯，可以，因為你可以睇下自己財力，咁知道自己有幾多嘅 buying power 去買到啲咩咯，咁樣咧就可以慳時間啦。
Okay, so since we know that you have such an abundant experience in UK property market, so how do you view the property market trend in UK? Do you think that there will be higher potential to growth in the following 2 to 3 years? Because nowadays more and more Hong Kong people are considering moving to UK. Is it a good timing now?
Okay, it's a great question. And I think it's a very interesting time in UK property right now to ask that exact question. We have a number of things that are happening in the UK and indeed happening around the world, which is affecting confidence in actually in the world economy, as well as the housing markets. right now, I think that there is a potential for a small price drop, generally speaking, in the UK. I think the reason for that is maybe confidence right now amongst sellers and buyers. They're not sure exactly what's going to happen. It's very difficult to tell from day to day what's happening in the world economy. Same thing in the UK. So I think that there is potential for maybe a small temporary price drop in the UK. But I think that it will be a very short-term situation. And the reason that I say that is that the UK has a housing supply shortage. The government in the UK hasn't been building houses for nearly 50 years, actually. Okay, so the housing stock that is available has come from private developers. And we have a rapidly growing population here. We've had a large amount of immigration into the UK over the last 10 to 15 years, particularly. And this has placed additional demand on the UK housing supply. So I think that we are in an interesting position right now if you're considering buying. Of course, we have the Hong Kong BNO situation as well, where a lot of people are now looking to either maybe have an investment property in the UK or maybe thinking about coming and settling here and buying a family home. That's also going to increase demand too. But I think that the general situation right now, the stamp duty relief has been quite important as well, because anybody who's thinking of buying for investment or personal use are saying, well, now is probably a really good time, a very good time to negotiate on price and also save money on the purchase with the stamp duty relief. I think that the medium and long-term outlook for UK property is going to continue to be very good. The UK is always in a fairly robust situation and bounces back and is impacted less than a lot of other UK markets. I'm old enough, actually, to remember the global financial recession of 2007 and 2008 in the US and in Europe. And house prices in the UK were not affected anywhere near as much as, say, the US housing market. So we saw price reductions of, on average, maximum of 15%. And I certainly don't think that that will be the case this time around, but I think there may be some softening in prices. Point, it will be a very good time, particularly if you're a cash buyer, to be able to negotiate on your purchase price of your property. Long term, I think it will be a very, very good outlook, as the UK has always performed. And I think that buying now, taking advantage of everything, the next 5 months are really the buy signal, really, for UK and overseas buyers.
Thank you.
好，咁我譯翻少少啦。咁短暫內嚟講咧，其實都會可能有少少跌。咁但其實咧長遠嚟講啦，講翻，因為個 stamp duty 就即係話嗰個印花稅寬限嗰度咧，就好吸引啊。咁所以令到大家咧都好想買。咁所以咧賣家咧就唔怕賣唔出咯啲嘢。咁同埋一般嚟講咧，講緊英國咧嘅樓市咧冬天咧就比較靜少少嘅。咁但係今年咧就有啲特別，因為 lockdown 之後咧，因為 lockdown 嘅時候咧，差唔多啲交易咧係喺肉唔到咁滯，即係冇乜交易。咁所以 lockdown 之後咧，就啲人咧就行翻晒出嚟，就去買樓啦。咁所以今年嘅冬天咧係比平時嘅冬天唔同咯。咁同埋當英國春天啊夏天翻返嚟嘅時候咧，啲人咧又會行翻出嚟去睇樓啊買樓噶啦。咁所以正話天話啦，嚟緊呢5個月其實係關鍵咯，因為有印花稅嘅着數啦， 咁同埋英國樓市一向即係長期以嚟嚟講咧，一般嚟講都會係強嘅。咁所以真係要真地把握時間啦，諗下呢5個月自己想投資定還是自住啦。
係啦，非常之贊成啊！咁 OK，
Thank you very much for sharing. So I believe all of us have learned a lot of useful information and points about purchasing a property in UK.
Yes, thank you very much, Tom and Jen. Thank you.
Thank you.
OK，thank you，
多謝晒你哋。
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.
拜拜。如果大家咧想了解更加多英國嘅置業資訊，或者諮詢我哋嘅英國物業專家阿 Tim 咧，歡迎咧你哋同我哋嘅顧問聯絡啦。如果大家想重溫翻今日嘅節目咧，記得 like、subscribe 同埋 follow 我哋啦。下一期嘅節目咧，我就會訪問我加拿大嘅一個好朋友啦，同大家分享一下加拿大嘅福利嘅方面嘅一啲情況㗎。跟住落嚟咧，仲會有台灣投資移民講座同埋加拿大嘅大西洋4省嘅移民講座啦。有興趣嘅朋友咧，記得咧收睇我哋嘅節目啦。好啦，今日嘅節目到呢度啦，多謝晒大家今日收睇啦。好啦，拜拜。